Today on the show, your life as an average American has just gotten significantly worse. We're going to talk about the reasons for that and what's going on around the country. I am your host, Sal Assante. This is the We the Patriots podcast, and let's get right into the show today. So I am back from my hiatus. Looks like things went well for me on the school side. So thank you to those who are following along on that. And it looks like I didn't miss a ton on the major story front, but a lot of different stories coming out around the country. So I kind of want to get into those. Yeah. So first and foremost, life is getting worse. And why is that? Well, the recent update to the year over year inflation numbers have come out. They're well over 3%. Some estimates I saw are somewhere around 3.5 to 3.8%. And if you were following along during the 2024 campaign between Trump and Harris or Biden at certain points, one of the biggest pitches that Trump and his cabinet made for his re-election, whatever you want to call it, was that inflation would be tampered down under his presidency. And lo and behold, we have pretty much the same old, same old. What's going on with that? Well, inflation numbers previous to the second interaction with Iran, the second interaction being what's been going on in the year of 2026, were relatively steady, actually somewhat near that target inflation rate, which, if we'll take a little aside, is bullshit. As I've said previously on the show, but I'll say again, any inflation is bullshit. The reason that inflation is so ridiculous and the reason that it hurts Americans so much is that very rarely, if ever, do you see the inflation actually go negative, in which case you would actually see deflating numbers. What a lot of economists nowadays say is that deflation is just as dangerous as inflation. At the end of the day, though, what is so dangerous about inflation is that if it's any percentage above zero, it is building off of previous increases. So, going back to COVID, if you have an average of something around 5%, we'll say, I could be off on that, up or down, but I don't think I'm too far off. We'll say that there is a 5% average annual inflation rate number since 2020. Well, that second year is 5% on top of that bigger number, and that third year is 5% on top of year one and two's bigger number, and so on and so forth. So even if you get to a point where the inflation is 2% and it's not going negative, you are still inflating on top of what's already a bigger number. And what we've seen since the COVID era is that prices have gone up and have never come down, whether you're talking about building costs, whether you're talking about food costs, whether you're talking about gas prices, energy costs, you name it, it's higher. And what we're seeing now, well, a lot of the inflation numbers are kind of piggybacking off of what's been going on at the fuel pump when you're talking about gasoline prices, oil prices, what have you in that sector. But at the end of the day, when you're looking at average costs for Americans every single day, this is what's happening to all of us, and we're all feeling it. Now, some more than others, some are able to capitalize on it better than the average American. All of us are feeling that 3.5 to almost 4% hike in prices. And again, you're building that off of what's already been a steady increase, well outpacing wage increases over the past 6 to 7 years. And it's hurting. Now, like I said, what's kind of happening with the gas and oil prices is directly related to what's been going on in Iran, and especially with the Hormuz Strait and the closing of it or the blockading of it, or however you really want to term it. When you look at it and really just look at the numbers and forget about whether we should be involved or not over there, it's hurting average Americans. The Trump administration's play is that you should be, as the American people should be willing to pay higher prices for taking care of an authoritarian regime, so to speak. And the numbers on that are mixed. And if anything, I think they're actually pretty negative. From what I've been seeing, most polls are saying that we shouldn't be involved in there at all. And if anything, getting any boots on the ground is an absolute no from the American people. And yet here we are still pondering it. Like I said, from the last episode, I was hoping for a little bit of an update, at least one way or the other, whether we were going to get more involved in Iran or not. we're still kind of in limbo there. From what I've been reading, there's all this boistering from the Trump administration claiming that we have technology to wipe them out, that we are willing to do that, bridge and power plant day again if we can't come to terms to an agreement. But it really just at this point is back and forth and still in a quasi ceasefire. We'll see what happens with that, but the ramifications are pretty clear. Costs to Americans have gone up exponentially. I mean, I remember paying somewhere in the mid twos to low twos in terms of dollars per gallon on gas, and now we're in the mid fours. Prices on that alone have almost gone up 80 to 100%. So just looking at the outlay, things are not looking great. And economically speaking, Trump is losing the ball here, and we'll see, if things can turn around. My guess is that if things don't turn around within the next probably month or so, they're not going to get back to levels that are going to be sustainable for him and the Republican Party to win in the midterms. I think he's already sunk there, but it's definitely going to be a loss there. So moving on as to why things are getting so bad, I'm sure that most of, if not all of you, have heard the news or heard the ramblings of the news in the sense that the AI data centers are the new wave of crazy. Not the aliens, not the alien files, not the UFO files that are supposed to be dropped that was supposed to kind of get our attention, I think, but the data centers. And what's going on with that? Well, I'm going to give you my best take. It's really hard to get really solid information on this because it seems like there is a frenzy of misinformation and propaganda, not to use leftist terms, but sincerely, that is what it sounds like is coming across. So just to give you guys it straight, I've seen a lot of anecdotal stories, especially here in New Jersey. You had one that I think was supposed to go in somewhere around like Woodbridge or Maplewood in that area. People are kind of up in arms. From what I understand, it's actually kind of right off the Garden State Parkway around the Union area. People are kind of up in arms, but the biggest one that's around us, if you are from the New Jersey, New York area, is that there was a data center that was supposed to go up in Andover, New Jersey. Now, those of you that know me well enough know that that's actually pretty closely tied to myself, my family business. And it was very interesting to me to see the reaction from the Andover population. People were very unhappy with what was going on. And from my understanding, it is not a done deal yet, but it seems like the people have at least secured themselves a pushback and are not guaranteeing that data center be brought in. Now, the bigger story across the country was the AI data center that was supposed to be moving into Utah, and rightfully so, I should say. The one in Andover, the one in Maplewood, or wherever the hell it was. It's more directly tied to myself, and I can give my own kind of anecdotal qualms with it. But the one in Utah took the cake, and here's why. So the numbers on it are that it was supposed to be a data center is actually bigger. The data center itself was supposed to be bigger than the entire island of Manhattan. The amount of jobs that it was supposed to supply, even though it's bigger than Manhattan, was somewhere around the range of like 2,000 to 5,000 jobs, maybe 20,000 max. Just you look at Manhattan, how many jobs they supply, it's somewhere in the millions. So you have quite a discrepancy there. And furthermore, the biggest issue that the people had, and very rightfully so, was that a bunch of Utahians, or however you want to say that, residents there in Utah in that area were basically given a notice that within the next year, your power is going to not be supplied by the normal supplier anymore. And basically, good luck finding another supplier. We're going to be selling to the data center. So what is the issue with these data centers? I'll give you kind of my guesses on it. This is not well researched, but my understanding from looking at a lot of content and looking at a lot of posts and a few articles about it is that there is a few different problems. Number one is their power draw, of course. When you look at the Utah example, the fact that people are losing out completely on their power is one thing, but as these AI data centers are getting put in across the country, one of the biggest problems that people are seeing, kind of understandably so, is that their power bill is going up exponentially faster than they would have expected over time. Now, given my time in selling the sham of solar, I kind of understood that although there were lies in our pitch, the general understanding that power bills were going to go up way higher than inflation rates was understood. But these rates that we're seeing, the rates that big corporations driving things like data centers, but more like manufacturing, all that thing into communities where there was nothing, are driving up prices exponentially and much faster than anybody could anticipate. Another issue as well is that they are utilizing a significant amount of water. Now, my understanding as to why AI data centers need access to water, and in a lot of cases fresh water, is very hazy, so I'm not going to claim to be an expert on that. But what I will say is that they are most definitely affecting the water supply in the surrounding regions where they are being put in. When you're looking at the overall impact, whether you want to talk about environmental or just the impact on human beings, power and water are two of basically not basically, they are two of the necessities to live in the modern world. Water being one that you can't survive even in the Stone Ages. Given that these massive pieces of infrastructure are being contemplated to be put in, and in what cases I've seen are not really coming up with a plan to mitigate what they are going to disturb, it's a major issue, especially in the Utah example, where you have people who are going to have what should be essentially a basic right and utility at this point in where we are as just a globe, power being taken away from them should be, in my opinion, illegal. Now, if you want more information, I think that there's a lot of different sources that you can go look up, a lot of articles. One thing I will say that I believe that everybody should try to partake in, it was a hard listen, but I think it kind of laid out where the other side of where I'm coming from was, in a very poor manner, might I add, but it laid out where, the billionaire investors and where all the money heads are coming from in terms of why they think this investment is totally fine and there's no issues. Please go listen to Tucker Carlson's interview with Kevin O'Leary. If you do not know who Kevin O'Leary is, he is I want to say former host, but could be a current host of the show Shark Tank. He really did not give a great case, so I'm going to kind of leave it at that. But go listen to that. Kind of get your own thoughts as to what the people who have the money and have the government backing, how they're able to kind of live off of grants and loans and tax rebates. I don't think rebates. I'm not going to come up with the wording. I apologize. But again, I'm not claiming to be an expert here. Just go take a listen to that and kind of understand how the rich continue to get richer on the backs of many of us in the lower classes compared to them. At the end of the day, what this is looking like is that the large corporations and the large donors don't really care. They do not care about us. They do not care about the people of the country. And what they really care about is, number one, their bottom dollar. And number two, what I took away from this interview anyway, was that one of the biggest reasons that they want to push this crap so hard, this AI crap, is that they want to compete with China at all costs. And at the end of the day, if you're not going to look at the impact that it has on your own population, whether you're looking at job loss, whether you're looking at economic impact, or you're talking about natural resources being sapped, or combination of all of those, environmental impact, of course. If none of that means anything to you, and your biggest thing is that you want to compete with China or get the highest dollar possible on your investment, well, then you're going to think kind of like Kevin O'Leary does in this segment. So I implore you to go listen to that. He and Tucker Carlson are going to go on to a level that I can't explain to you at this point, but what I hope to convey to you is that this is going on around the country. Please go get information on it and kind of understand that if it does come to your area, you should have a voice. You should be able to go and talk to your local administration and your local politicians and at least try to fight back against this stuff getting installed before you are hit too hard in terms of increases in any cost that you have, is utilities or a combination of the above. Now, what I also want to add as an anecdote, and I do not have really great information on this, so I kind of want to just make it an anecdote. Andrew and I were kind of texting back and forth. Actually, had another member in our group that we were talking to. Won't throw his name in the mix here, but what I found really fascinating was I found a video that looked like in the middle of West Virginia, old mines, whether they were coal, iron mines, what have you, and they were being flushed out with water, massively, massively contaminating the water in this area. So, talk about data centers, the AI data centers, the big talking point, but There is different places around this country and really around the world where the government and large corporations are doing things to the population that are completely against the people that are living there. Whether you want to talk about, jacking up prices, jacking up taxes, or contaminating their water, pulling away their power supply, making food unaffordable. Any of these things are happening under our noses. And at the end of the day, many of us are really failing to take notice based on, outside stories that are taking precedence, whether it be Iran, whether it be Russia and Ukraine, whether it be anything that's going on with China and Taiwan, or what's going on in Africa, what's going on in Syria, what's going on in Lebanon. Any of these things are taking precedence instead of our backyard. And for people like me, and I would say a lot of libertarian thinking people, not to call myself libertarian because I don't think I align myself 100%, but many people who are thinking in the let's solve our own problems in our own backyard before jumping onto that train of the going out finding demons to slay. This is why, we have infrastructure that is just crumbling around our country. Forget about the new infrastructure they want to put in data centers and manufacturing and whatnot. We have infrastructure that is crumbling, whether it be highways, whether it be public transport, whether it be our airline system, or just our cost for transport, even if it's private transport like fuel. We have so many issues to focus on that are at home, and yet we continue to go look for demons to slay outside of our country, and it is costing us trillions of dollars and is part of, maybe if not the leading reason for our deficit to be going towards $40 trillion by the end of the year. So that's kind of where I'm coming on that. And lastly, I kind of want to talk about a story that is not really impactful to the people that are local to the New York area, but I think could impact you if you are from anywhere in America or are interested in America. And that has been Trump's attack on Thomas Massie and his campaign. Now, if you've been following anything in terms of Thomas Massie and the kind of back and forth battle between Massie and Trump, basically since Trump has been elected for his second term, what you'll notice is that Massie is basically not voting for anything that Trump is pushing, and Trump is continually calling Massie out as a sellout, as an anti-Semite, as all of these different things. And I'm not trying to cast Thomas Massie as a saint. Honestly, furthest thing from it. What I noticed was that he was very willing to capitulate on bills that were led by the Democrat Party under Joe Biden. As soon as Trump gets in, he has a problem voting for basically the same bills. I've noticed that as well. Clearly, there are issues with the man, but at the end of the day, what he's done in terms of coming out with Ro Khanna and coming out and standing up for the victims of the Epstein scandal, so to speak, and looking for justice in that department, and also standing up, I think, to Trump's brazenness in this recent outgoing effect into Iran, and many other things, I think that is actually applaudable. Someone that is coming from the right point of view or the Republican Party and is attempting to be that voice of reason. And yet Trump is going after him harder than ever. You see scandals that come out. I believe there was a scandal that just came out a week or two ago that was accusing Massie of having basically a bribe to an ex-girlfriend in order to get her to drop a case against something I'm not fully in tune with. I'm not trying to claim to be, but what it read as, if you kind of look just one layer deeper than the text, is that Thomas Massie is being slammed. The most unfortunate part for me being an outsider looking in is that, it was basically him and Rand Paul that were the opposition inside of the Republican Party who were willing to stand up to Trump, willing to try to re-steer the ship. And unfortunately, what happened right after the call it assassination attempt of Trump that was at the White House Correspondents' Dinner that we kind of talked about a couple of weeks ago, after that, Rand Paul seemed to fall in line, at least in terms of pushing to get funding for Trump's ballroom, which that's another whole issue that I don't really want to get into right now. But my real point is that Rand Paul seemed to fall in line, and it really kind of broke my heart because you had two stalwarts, one that was in the Senate in Rand Paul and one that was in the House in Thomas Massie, that were pushing against the Trump agenda full on. That doesn't mean that they wouldn't side with them on certain things, but when it came down to, blowing out the spending for wars, when it came down to the Epstein files, when it came down to pushing for transparency in general for the administration, these two were the ones to stand up with. And after that incident a few weeks ago with the shooting at the correspondence dinner, it seemed like Rand Paul kind of fell out of that group. And so, without anybody else to really push for, Thomas Massey became that guy, the only one that was kind of left, in my opinion. And the attack on him has been brutal, to say the least. Just be on the lookout for that. I want to say that the primary is going to be coming up within the next month or two. So just keep an eye out on that. Just see what happens. Obviously, 99%, if not all of us, are not going to be voting in that primary election, but keep an eye out for that. It's very possible that anybody who gets elected on the Republican side for this upcoming midterm election may be a full lockstep, boot-clicking MAGA Republican and not actually looking out for conservative values. Like, I think that the former Rand Paul and current Thomas Massey would be considered. And it kind of brings me full circle onto my point in the whole show, and that is the fact that your life has gotten a hell of a lot worse. And why do I say that? Well, number one is, of course, economically. The whole slogan of getting Clinton elected, even before my lifetime and before a bunch of yours, I'm sure, was it's the economy, stupid. One of the biggest failings of H.W. Bush got beat was that essentially Clinton brought the Democratic Party back from a point of basically only caring about social issues and bring back to the economy. Actually, was, if you look at the metrics and what he was actually focused on policy-wise, probably considerably further to the right than even Donald Trump. And yet he won, bringing the Democratic Party back to a realignment in terms of focusing on the economy. And the economy's not great right now. I think you'd have to be ignorant. I think you'd have to really be hoping that your side is correct if you really think that this economy that we're living under right now is good. I'm watching prices around me, not just fuel, but everything around it. Obviously, I think most of us know that fuel affects other prices, but I'm watching prices get outlandishly high. They've been outlandishly high. There's no real hope for the younger generation affording a home unless you have, daddy's money, you have an ability to create an invention. If you're just working hard and attempting to save enough money and buy a house, it is a really, really far-fetched idea. And it's out there, man. Prices, especially in my neck of the woods, if you're talking about buying a house in the middle of Iowa, you might have a better chance, but you're looking at somewhere in the tri-state area, which is where I live, you are kind of shit out of luck. And especially given a lot of our situations, I find myself to be blessed a lot more so than I think a lot of people, and it still seems pretty daunting. Now, that's just housing. You can go ahead and talk about food, you can talk about fuel, you can talk about rent, you can talk about just the cost to live in general is extremely high, and the economy's not looking great. And then you look on to what the corporations and the government in tow are looking to push with these massive data centers and essentially squandering your rights. And I implore you to go and look into these things because they are scary. It is like a giant freight train that looks like it might not be able to be stopped. And what these places are looking to do with these AI data centers, one of the things that I took away from the Kevin O'Leary interview with Tucker Carlson was that, he's one of those guys that says, oh, well, I have nothing to fear, so I can give my information to these hawks that are looking at everything. And that's like one of the biggest conservative talking points against things like communism, things against socialism, things against major government oversight. It's been a talking point for decades. And now we have someone who's claiming to be essentially a conservative and pro-Trump and using the same argument essentially to push these AI data centers. And, that's a scary thought. It's a scary thought to think that our own side may be utilizing this technology to essentially put their boot on our throats as Americans. And I don't care what side you're on, that is scary. Even if you think you have nothing to hide, guess what? That leadership can change, and what could be determined as being anti-American could be determined as being treasonous, could be determined as being racist, could be whatever. Be determined by someone who doesn't really give a fuck what you think and only cares about putting you in jail because you have a thought that is against the norm, against the grain, and outside their Overton window. So be on the lookout for that. That is a really scary thought, but it is the future, especially with these AI companies getting more and more involved. You have places like Palantir getting involved with the government, and it's very scary to think that there could be a government official that is in charge of whether you are able to live freely or not. And then finally, the one representative that is in Congress that I think is left in terms of representing some sort of middle ground for us Americans that are living in the middle. And he's getting just railroaded by the president and his cabinet and his newly fangled toy that is looking to go after him in Kentucky. So look out for all these things. Do your best. If you have one of these AI data centers, you have a project coming up, a mega living expanse that the taxpayers are giving a credit to in order to have built, whether it be a giant rental complex, whether it be AI data center, whether it be manufacturing that's going to impact your power bills, your rent, or your utilities or anything like that. Don't be afraid to speak up, and if you hear about it and it's local enough to us, let us know. We'll try to get out there with you because, this is our opportunity to fight back against this, what I'll call crony capitalism. It is not actually looking out for the best interest of the people and is setting up an opportunity for the rich to get richer and pounce on the lower income people. You might even be a middle class person, but compared to these behemoths, you are nothing and they will squash you like a bug. And I think honestly, if you are a middle class person, you are a bigger threat to these giant corporations than is the tiny person who has essentially no representation. Now, do what you can. We have the midterms coming up. If you see a candidate, see if you can talk to them, try to get their real feelings about things, and don't just trust what they put on their website. Don't just trust what their interviews say. Go out, try to actually get a feel and make the best decision that you can. And that's really the only way that we turn things around. At the end of the day, we have no chance to vote in Trump for a third term. So there will be a new candidate coming up in 2028. I apologize. In 2028, there will be a new candidate. So go make the best decision that you can now. And let's hope that we can lead our country back into a better trajectory for the future and start actually heading towards a place of being proud to be American again. That's all I got for you today. I love you all. Thank you for listening to the show and bearing with me on my week off. I'm your host, Sal Assante. Please give a like and subscribe here on YouTube, or if you're listening on Spotify, give a follow, share the show, and I will be with you all next week. See what we got going on. Peace out.
I want to be something, not nothing. Trapped inside my dream and I'm running away from these demons. But the feeling's so good, I'ma keep dreaming.